Boo! Hi, everybody! So, are we all nicely creeped out by that little gramophone bit there?
That was really creepy.
I like it. I figured it was...
That's not creepy, Josh, that you like that is creepy. Not at all.
No, of course not. Everybody says, okay, that music was creepy until it gets annoying. Yeah, it goes on a little too long, but...
Well, that's holiday Halloween music. Are
That-
they all
yeah,
like
that-
that?
I figured it works well with the theme for today's episode, which is Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft, two people who love to skew reality.
Oh, that is a lovely way of putting it.
Arivandi says, hi, Josh and guest. The guest is Rachel.
Hi.
She is back again.
Yep.
And we have lots to talk about. Like, last week we were talking classic horror and we went over a lot of different stories.
Yeah.
This time we're just doing two writers, but there is a lot to talk about with these two guys.
Well, in this case, we're not really talking so much about guys who wrote some novels. We're talking about guys who wrote short stories
And poems.
And quite a few of them, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think either of them actually wrote a full novel.
Um,
Poe, I don't know, the narrative of Arthur
Reward?
Gordon Pym
yeah.
might be considered a novel. I don't know.
I don't have my wonderful Barnes & Noble $7.95 discount Everything Poe Ever Wrote book with me, unfortunately.
Mine is sadly still back east in storage.
That's okay. Don't worry about forgetting my name. I don't even think my students know my name. I'm just Miss.
What's Ava saying? I dreamt I had a huge pit under my bed and was afraid to fall in it. Well, that happens a lot.
Was it larger than the bed?
Okay, was it actually...
Yeah, no, I'm actually trying to picture
Was the pit in the bed, or was the bed surrounded by the
Yeah.
pit?
Yeah.
Because it can go either way, both of which were in Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
You know, as soon as you said that, the first thing I thought of was Johnny Depp's death in the first one.
Mhm.
Fountain of Blood bed is just one of the best things.
Yes, it is.
In movies.
It's pretty great. So I guess we'll start with a little quick reminder about our book of the month, which is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, which is a fantastic book. I hope you're all reading it. I'm rereading it.
And definitely read it. Watch the movie, but read it.
Yeah,
It's worth reading.
I'd recommend both. Both are excellent.
Should they read the book or watch the movie first?
I'd recommend reading the
See, that's what I
first.
always say. But sometimes I wonder, would it be better the other way around? I don't know.
I see. It's weird because I saw the movie first before reading the book because I grew up watching it as a kid.
Yeah.
No,
I stayed away from that stuff as a kid.
Okay, so Ava is saying that the bed was slipping into the pit.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah, that's not a fun dream.
I
I'm
have
sorry
a fear
you had
of
that.
depths too. I'm not happy.
I had a weird dream about Star Wars last night,
I don't remember.
where they basically started a TV show about Han, Luke, and Leia.
So it was like the Christmas special?
But it was starring Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, but they got some young pretty boy to play Luke.
Oh god.
And Leia was the bad guy.
Whoa.
And they
Okay.
and they had also all been transported into our world.
That is a really bad dream.
It was pretty horrible.
I'm sorry.
It was quite the nightmare.
Yeah. That's like the kind of nightmare that it doesn't seem really nightmaric unless you know what it is. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I was just that.
And Jan is here. Welcome back, Jan. Haven't seen you in a while.
Howdy.
He's been at film school for the last few months.
Cool.
I hope it's going well, and hopefully you're still there and just taking a quick break.
Well, this is on the internet. He could still be there.
He could still be there.
He could be anywhere.
He could be here. But he's not.
I don't see him.
I only do gags like that with Kelly and Alex from Happy Hobbit. So yeah, today we're talking Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. And so we'll start with the earlier of the two,
The
Mr.
elder.
Edgar Allan Poe.
There's that iconic face.
Yep. Like, I swear to God, I feel like that's like the only portrait he ever took. I know I've seen others,
It's the
but
only
really
one
that's the
any of
famous
us.
one.
It's the only one any of us ever actually copy.
Yeah.
Or that gets reprinted.
Yeah.
I want to say I've seen other portraits of his, but unfortunately,
When I was
that's his face.
When I was doing an image search for him, I did find other portraits, but they were all just they were all pretty much the same face.
Yeah. Well,
and so that's the big iconic one.
I think that's one reason.
But most of what I saw, most of what I found were like deviant art illustrations of him.
Exactly. Exactly. When you do a search for a portrait of Poe, and believe me, I have, you find, and if you're doing it from work, you're really screwed because deviant art is blocked. So you see, you see an icon, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Click.
Yeah.
You may not go through this unless you are an authorized user, and I am. I'm just too lazy to log in every time I want to look at a freaking picture.
Well, that's your own fault for working at a school.
It is. It is a terrible fault of mine.
How dare you be a teacher and shape young minds?
I know. It is absolutely frightening. But, yeah, no, I was just looking if I had a picture. One of my students did a piece of art about Poe, portrait. She cut out the eyes, and it's in a tube, and if you look through the eyes, you can see part of a graphic novel of one of his most famous works. In fact, probably his most famous poem.
Oh, I think I know that one.
I think you do too. I think everybody must know that one.
It's the one about the bird, right?
Yes, the one with the bird, and it says that thing.
Oh yeah,
the thing that the bird says.
The pigeon. That's what. No, that's not right.
It wasn't a pigeon.
Oh dang.
Seagull.
No.
It's one of those birds that you see
around
the dump.
It was an emu.
It couldn't have been an emu. Emus can't fly.
That's what made it so weird.
Oh god, now I'm picturing. Okay,
Both the emus. Derpy derp.
Yeah, seriously. Okay.
It's a very different poem.
Yeah, I think so. But anyways, if you really don't know which poem we were referring to, and you don't know your ornithology, it's the Raven. The Raven, yes. Which is in the textbook that I use in my classroom, along with two other pieces by Poe. The Fall of the House of Usher and The Mask of the Red Death.
Both really good stories. Yeah,
really good. Except that I usually use The Mask of the Red Death because even though it's harder for the kids to read, the Fall of the House of Usher is one of those stories, and I'll probably talk more like this when we get into Lovecraft as well, but the story concept is so great. The execution in the writing is very classic, as in difficult for modern kids to get through.
I can see that.
You know?
I can see that.
They are so impatient. We've got Vine now.
Yeah.
It used to be just, teachers were contending with YouTube, but now it's 6 seconds at a time, and there's no going back.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just, I'm browsing through Poe's biography, just getting a sense of his life, which was an interesting life. Everybody in the chat is talking about Batman.
I was about to say, why is everybody talking about that?
Because Jan is here. This is what he
does.
Bats
aren't even birds.
No.
And they're not rodents.
Because Jan is a huge Chris Nolan Batman fan, and it's a long running
thing.
Then
let me piss him out. Bats aren't rodents, Dr. Meridian. Really? I didn't know that. You are interesting. What kind of freaking doctor doesn't know that bats aren't rodents? And yeah, I know that was Joel Schumacher. That's why I had to do that.
That barely counts as a Batman movie.
It's fun. It's fun to make fun of.
But there actually is a Batman connection somewhere in this mix, and we'll get to that later.
Will we?
Ooh, we will.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm. So, Jan, you came back for the right episode. We actually have a reason to discuss Batman.
Oh my gosh.
Later.
Isn't that awesome when you get that in life? An actual reason to discuss the Batman.
Yes. It is pretty awesome. So Ava is saying The Mask of the Red Death is my favorite, and The Black Cat, the one that you can't read.
The one I can't read.
Yeah.
I can't read it. And that's ridiculous because I've been reading Poe almost since I've been reading, and I can't get through it. It's just,
It was
animal abuse.
Yeah.
Abuse people, fine. Animals really gets me.
It's a rough story.
I've tried several times, and I've gotten to different degrees, but I just, oh man.
Like it's a very haunting story, and they actually there is an adaptation of it. It was an episode of Masters of Horror, directed by.
It was a great series.
Yes, it was, but it's directed by one of our favorite directors, Stuart Gordon,
who is famous for his Lovecraft adaptations.
Yeah, and he has
And
adapted
Poe?
both Poe and Lovecraft very masterfully, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few people to do it well. And in
Yeah,
fact,
actually, that's very true.
And in fact, we just saw one of his adaptations this past Friday.
Yes, but hold on to that.
Yes,
Hold on to that.
That's Lovecraft.
Yes, I gotta hold on to that one.
Yeah. Darn it!
Stuart Gordon also had his a Poe production starring actor Jeffrey Combs. But
Nevermore. Yes.
Yeah, I never saw it.
I saw it. I feel like you were there with me, but clearly not.
I was in spirit.
It was really good. Jeffrey Combs is an amazing actor.
And he played Poe in the miniseries episode of Black Cat too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are all these reasons for me to watch it, but again, I couldn't finish the story. I can't watch. Oh my goodness! Sorry.
Yeah. But
that's like my thing.
Yeah, like Nevermore was really cool because it's a one-man show, and it's Jeffrey Combs as Edgar Allan Poe, doing a fictitious reading of his stories towards the end of his career when he had really succumbed to alcoholism. And so throughout the whole performance, he has a little flask and he'll just take a little sip every now and then, and as the show goes on and on, he gets drunker and more belligerent, and he's yelling at the audience. He starts seeing people out in the audience.
How did I? Oh, bring it back, please.
And he also does probably some of the best dramatic tellings of The Raven and The Telltale Heart I've ever heard.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Because The Telltale Heart would be a really fun one to see dramatically performed.
It's a great story. Telltale Heart is probably my favorite of Poe's, just because it was the first Poe story that I ever read.
Did you read it in school?
No. I happened to just pick it up in the library.
Really? So you came upon it
kind of happenstance.
Wow.
Actually, where the whole thing germinated was an old Halloween audio cassette that I had, and it was mostly sound effects and scary music and that sort of thing. But it ended with the dramatic reading of The Telltale Heart.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it scared the bejesus out of me.
Well, of course. That's fantastic.
And
I love that.
And so, as you do when you're scared, I want to learn more about it. So that's how I.
That might explain my entire life.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I think you just did. Explain my entire life in one sentence.
Aravondi can't focus on the screen. I'm sorry.
I just stopped wearing my glasses. I don't think I've worn them for a year.
You don't need to look at the screen. You just need to hear our lovely voices.
Yeah, trust me.
Oh,
I have a face for radio.
But you have a face for everything. Shut up.
I'm gonna be on the radio. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, there is the chat going on. So yeah, I guess you do need to kind of look at the screen a little bit.
Yeah, I getcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still don't wear my glasses.
And I'm with you, Eru. I don't like contacts either.
I've never tried them, and I'm terrified of them, and I can't believe people use them. And now that we've got this discussion on glasses, look, this is how my glasses came out. And yes, these are my prescription glasses. Oh, I should leave these on. I feel like I'm more professional now.
Now you look like...
Now I look like I belong.
Now you look like a teacher.
I know what I'm talking about now because I wear glasses.
So...
It has nothing... Eyesight and intelligence are like this.
So, in this crazy discussion, did you mention which were your favorite Poe stories?
My favorite Poe stories. That's... Okay. That's something I should have already thought about, and I told you I would, and I never did.
That's okay.
Terrible. My first real exposure to Poe was a book in the library of my elementary school. And before I even read the book, of course, it had illustrations, and they were some original illustrations. And the pictures scared me so much.
Oh, yeah.
That I had nightmares about the pictures for years.
That's me. And,
but then I read the stories because I saw a picture for The Pit and the Pendulum.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one.
And the picture was just so terrifying. And the story itself, I had never read a story quite like it.
The Pit and the Pendulum is...
it's first-person narration.
Story. Yeah. It's been a while since I've read it, so maybe you can describe it better.
Me too,
Okay.
but I hope I think it's hard to forget.
Yeah.
It's a first-person narration. It's present tense, really, because the narrator, the protagonist, is somebody who is in the middle of what would appear to be a torture session.
Yeah.
Similar to something you might experience in the Spanish Inquisition, and I've seen adaptations that have kind of tried to bring those two ideas together.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the famous Vincent Price movie.
Yes.
Which I've never seen.
I don't know if I should say stay that way or go see, it's one of those movies where you're like, okay, the original story is great. Will seeing this movie mess with that in any way?
Well, and Ava's saying my favorite Poe poem is The Dream Within a Dream, which I've never heard of.
That's in my giant book. It's one of the ones I haven't.
I must have skipped
Ava,
that
how
one.
long is that one? Because I will tell you honestly, if it's one of the shorter ones, I probably have read it. I gotta be honest, I don't have time to read that much.
I know.
And I am prejudiced against poetry.
Okay.
Because and it's not because of actual poetry, it's because in high school I had too many emo friends who wrote too much poetry. And they're like, you must read this. And they thought it was so meaningful. They thought they were Edgar Allan Poe, but they were really just 15-year-olds who didn't even know what alcohol tasted like. So it wasn't the same.
Every emotional teenager fancies themselves to be Edgar Allan Poe at some point in their
I
lives.
really feel like that is definitely the case. There is every and nowadays probably back then too, but the boys write raps.
So Ava's saying it's really sad but so beautiful. Well, now I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to read this one.
Do I have a portable computer with me to find it really quickly? Find out.
Let's see. Can I bring up his works?
Okay, let's see. I have other Poe favorites. I do get to teach The Mask of the Red Death, which I love the fact that I get to teach that because I really like the story. It's apart from Poe's other work because it's an allegory. It isn't something that you're supposed to take literally as a realistic story. It's more like a fairy tale. And
found it.
Wow, look at that.
A Dream Within a Dream.
Dang. Wow.
Oh,
is it
it's actually really short.
Yes. I mean, that's great. Reading long things is important. Oh my God.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, this is.
It's a good one. So I gotta read that one.
It's a good one. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm quiet. I'm silently reading on a web show.
This is really a podcasting job.
This is riveting podcasting right here.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, let me lecture on while you read that poem.
Sorry, already done. That's how short it is.
Dang.
See, it's.
I was getting close to something meaningful, and how I learned the definition of the word
This is how long it is. It fits on one screen.
Oh, I love how that fits on one screen. That's lovely. No, it turns out that I do like poetry, but most poetry I like is actually poetry that tells stories as opposed to interpretive poetry. So
you see, that's
Poe's
what,
poetry, a lot of that fits.
Yeah, a lot of it is narrative poetry, which I really like. That's why I think The Raven.
It's hugely popular because of that, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's a very sad story, and it's kind of unsettling at the same time.
And I think there's something almost Seussian about the rhymes that really appeals to just to the English language speaking ear.
It does. It's got a nice rhyme scheme. It's got a nice rhythm to it.
And the
And
name Lenore, I just
Yeah.
that name
Well,
really made an impression with me.
like that's what I like about it, because like you have the woman's name Lenore, and you have the raven saying Nevermore.
You said it.
I did. I said
You
it.
said the word.
I said the word.
That's like one of those words like Voldemort.
Now you done it.
Oh,
Now you done it.
here come the Death Eaters. That feels like you shouldn't say.
I know
It's like a precious word. That's
like,
what the bird says. You can't
it's
say
like
it.
one of those things, like you say it and like bad things happen. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the Scottish play.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, I miss teaching that one.
Yeah.
That's
still one of my
Scottish
favorites.
play is we're allowed to say the word because we're not in.
We're not in theater, so
Macbeth.
we're Macbeth.
Which I did like teaching because it's dark and spooky and it has supernatural elements and ridiculous bearded witches. James the First had this thing with witches. He wrote a whole book.
Interesting.
Yeah. See, sorry. America, Poe. Poetry.
That's okay.
Poetry by Poe.
It's okay. It's okay to go off on tangents here. We do it all the time.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not the only one who thinks that Poe
Temple setting, the flow and rhythm of Poe is very much like Seuss. I never thought of it that way. It really is. And until you pointed it out, like I hadn't really likened it to Seuss, which is weird because we were talking about Dr. Seuss just before the podcast started.
I think that kind of helped. That kind of stick in there for me.
Yeah.
So that was all good timing.
Excellent.
Yeah, good times.
I Stole the One Ring is saying The Raven was always the first Poe story I read.
Now remember, it's a poem.
It's a poem.
But it's a story.
But it's
a poem.
It's a narrative. It's a narrative poem. So it's and that's what I like about his poems is that they always have some sort of story. Like
and my students assume it's a story too. They never remember it's a poem because of the story.
And another one of his that I absolutely love is Bells or The Bells. Because basically it's just a quick poem about one man's descent into utter madness.
He was really big on one man's descent into utter madness, wasn't he?
Not as much as Lovecraft.
Okay,
we'll get into that
we'll get into that. It's like Poe is a necessary precursor.
Yes, he is.
But that's not to diminish what Poe wrote, because Poe's work itself is obviously classic, excellent literature.
It's highly influential even today.
Oh my goodness. Yes, as we were saying, deviant art. Go on and you'll find a million pictures of Poe portraits.
Yep. There's a lot. Like Poe still remains a big influence today, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. I'm speaking, of course, of a movie that came out a few years ago.
Oh my god, I thought you were going to get all like serious and, like, I don't know, emo kid on me.
No,
but you're actually talking about a bad movie.
I'm talking about a bad movie. And this is a movie called The Raven, starring, of all people, John Cusack as Edgar Allan Poe.
Just that casting.
Just imagine that.
Angered me.
Try to picture in your head John Cusack.
Well, they might
John
not have to.
Cusack.
They've seen the posters now. It's happened.
But he didn't even look like him because, first of all, he doesn't just have a mustache. He's got a full-on goatee. So he doesn't look like Poe at all.
And that's really funny too, because Poe's features are so distinctive. You could it's easy to look like him with the right facial hair. It's almost a caricature. But no.
So this movie focuses on.
I wasn't pretty enough, probably.
Yeah.
Ooh, alliteration.
Hey, you're a poet and you didn't even consider.
Thank you. Good. All right. There, you just made that perfect. So adaptation.
Yeah. So it was about Poe's death, which is something that fascinates a lot of people.
Especially recently, and especially on Facebook.
I've noticed that. Well, recently, and this is only because the anniversary of his death was just a few days ago. It was October 7th.
He couldn't have waited just, a few more weeks. Maybe a little more
I Stole the One Ring saying, I watched that movie. I was trying to forget it. Thanks, Jeff. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just, just the first time I heard of that movie, I was just so horrified by the casting that I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. Stay away.
Yeah. Well, the whole concept is basically he is tracking down a serial killer who is basically an Edgar Allan Poe superfan who is killing people in the different styles of his stories. So you have somebody who's killed by a pendulum. You have somebody who is bricked up in a basement.
That actually happened.
Yes.
Poe based it on a true story.
Yes, I know.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I learned that when I was teaching it.
Yeah.
My students were like, Miss, did you know this is a true story? And I was like, wait, really? What?
Yeah.
They taught me something.
Mm-hmm. And what's crazy is, like, what's so funny is, like, that story was influenced by a real event, and then that story influenced what I'm sure were many other events like it later on.
Definitely. And none of us know about the real historical event, which, to put it very, very briefly, was, I want to say it was an army officer who his subordinates really, he was just an ass.
Yes.
And they walled him up.
Mm-hmm.
And his body was discovered eventually, and that's how they know it did happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that actually it not as romantic at all as what Poe turned it into, but it's really interesting that actually happened.
Yeah.
And Poe made it his own, and he turned it into
he turned it into a very haunting story.
a great story that taught me how to say Amontillado.
Yeah.
Who would have? I mean, I've worked at Trader Joe's. We don't sell Amontillado. I had to learn a lot about wine for that too.
Yeah, very few people sell Amontillado, and from what I understand, it's not really that great a wine.
Yeah, it's like a dessert wine or something, like a sherry. Like nobody really wants it anyways. And that's really funny.
And I only got that because I listened to the Dinner Party Download, which is like
nice.
my goofy attempt to try to be civilized. And they were talking about.
Don't even try anymore.
They were talking about the death of Edgar Allan Poe because it was right around the anniversary. And so they tried to give you a cocktail recipe for Poe. And of course, it sounded awful, but part of it, one of the ingredients was Amontillado. And so the hosts are like, so what is Amontillado? What's it like? And the guy's like, oh, it's terrible. You don't want to drink it.
But make this cocktail out of it.
Make this horrible, horrible cocktail in honor of Edgar Allan Poe.
And drink it. and I bet the recipe they gave was like, so you'd make a pitcher, of course. Not
no,
drink.
it was like a little drink.
Single serving.
Yeah, thank God. I don't know.
But that's hilarious because the whole point of the cask of Amontillado is Amontillado, the wine, is used as a lure to get a certain character in a position where our protagonist can wreak his revenge on him.
Yeah.
And so Amontillado is supposed to be really precious.
And from what I understand,
great wine.
It's been a while since I've read Cask of Amontillado, but from what I remember, it was actually revenge over something very petty.
Oh, yeah. No. 1,000 insults of Fortunato I had borne. I had to teach it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was basically the protagonist in that story is just crazy. And you just go with that. And his family seems to
Edgar Allan Poe writing stories about crazy people?
I know.
What?
So, it blows your mind. I know. But I love that. I love that story. And it's so funny to say I love that story because all of these stories have terrible endings. Or even beginnings.
Yeah.
And they're so great. What movie? The Raven.
We were talking about The Raven.
John Cusack.
Starring John Cusack.
It's hard to find good Poe adaptations.
It really is. And if you are truly curious about The Raven, I believe it is on Netflix.
Is there a riff tracks for it?
There isn't.
Then I can't do it. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get like a group together and just do it ourselves.
I don't know if I can even do that, man. I barely got through Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
and the
I
Kingdom
know.
of the Crystal Skull.
But that was its own brand of terrible.
At least that isn't based on classic literature.
No, it's just based on a classic movie.
Which was based on classic movies.
True.
So, whatever, it ended up in sorrow and tears.
Yeah, and so does this. So, but yeah, we were talking about this. This all goes back to the death of Edgar Allan Poe, which seems to have some sort of controversy surrounding it. Okay, Ava's actually asking a question. Do you remember why Usher buried his sister alive? Was it just because he had gone mad? It's been a while since I read The Fall of the House of Usher.
Hold on. This is unfortunate because the last time I experienced the story, and I have to use that word, was the Vincent Price movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't trust that.
No.
I can't. And I haven't reread it because I skipped that one in the textbook because The Mask of the Red Death is shorter. And they need allegories.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read The Fall of the House of Usher, but I sort of feel like
well, the whole family descended into madness.
Yeah. And so I'm sure that there was probably an impetus for burying his sister alive.
I admit my first impulse was to go, wait, Usher, the singer? Me too. Not just you, me too.
He's buried lots of people.
Yeah. Oh my god. He's actually buried people.
Yeah. So, what was I talking about? So, yeah, like, the way Poe deals with madness is usually, if somebody is mad, but there's usually just like something minor that just sets them off. For like
there's got to be a catalyst,
like Cask of Amontillado or Telltale Heart.
Cask of Amontillado was definitely a crime of opportunity. The narrator starts out by telling you this guy Fortunato is he's insulted me this many times and blah blah blah, and so I'm gonna get my revenge, and it's just it's so. Yeah. It was carefully planned out, and that character was so obviously mad in the traditional crazy sense.
Yeah.
I think Usher really falls in that category too.
Yeah, and also same with the Telltale Heart. Like he even admits, like he likes the old man. Like he's like I had no problem with him. I just hated his weird eye, and so of course I had to meticulously plan a brilliant way to murder him.
And you know what? But I think that's just again, we've got a lot of first-person narrators. I think that's just the protagonist trying to convince himself he's not a bad guy.
Well, yeah, I mean... Well,
the guy's obviously absolutely insane.
Yeah, the whole thing... Well, that's what I love so much about the Telltale Heart is, like, throughout the whole thing, like, basically this is his confession to the police.
Yeah.
Like, basically he's saying, you may think I'm mad, but really I'm not. Listen to how well I'm speaking. Listen to how perfectly I planned out the crime. Would a madman do anything like this?
Actually.
Yes, he would.
You know, I think that's really ahead of its time because now, we've got enough psychology and we have enough crap on TV, crud on TV, where we do know that actually, yes, that is how a madman does think. Poe didn't know that. We're talking, pre-Freud here.
Yeah.
Psychology.
Poe comes
crazy.
Poe comes from a very dark place.
Literally or figuratively?
Kind of both. I mean, he did live in Baltimore. I'm sorry, Baltimore. That was mean. Cheap shot.
I like Maryland. It's got such a lovely name, It sounds almost happy. Maryland. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, like he definitely was like he was an alcoholic for one, and so that obviously addled his brain quite a bit. Like with his death, like he the whole mystery surrounding his death is that he disappeared for 6 days, and then they found him wandering a park, completely bedraggled, smelling awful, mumbling to himself, and then they take him into a hospital, and later on he dies.
Yeah, that's not mysterious. That's what we call a drunken binge.
Yeah, like...
In a sewer, maybe.
Yeah, and so the official cause of death as reported was congestion of the brain, which is sort of like...
He just couldn't sneeze it out?
Yeah. It's kind of the...
That's like crazy.
It's the kind way of saying this guy drunk himself to death.
Because congestion of the brain, to me, sounds like what they're trying to say is that your brain swelled or something.
Yeah.
Or there's something wrong with your head.
Yeah.
So that would be the, somebody dies of crazy reasons. Congestion of brain. Shot himself. Congestion of brain. Trying to relieve pressure.
But so many people, because he was missing for 6 days, it sort of created like these wonderful fantasies and conspiracy theories of like maybe he was actually fighting all these things that he had created and they were real.
No, don't say so many people. Say enough people to get a movie starring John Cusack to be made, and let's leave it at that, because I don't want to think that there are that many people.
Well, seeing my Facebook feed over the last couple of days says there's quite a few people who are into this sort of thing.
Yeah, but I'll admit, I have my own suspicions about the death of Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah.
Seriously, a shotgun.
Yeah.
Stomach.
Mm-hmm.
What do? Pull it with his feet?
Maybe.
Okay, sorry, but
He wasn't a guy who liked to do things simply.
No.
I'm sorry, that was really dark.
But I think one of the things that we get with time and history is things become mysteries too.
Yeah.
And we always want to think that there's more to the story, because there has to be. It can't be that somebody who created such magical fiction just dies ignominiously.
Just drinks himself to death like that. Yeah.
At least Hemingway did that.
Yeah, you want to believe there's more. And like one of the other like conspiracy theories with him is that he was subjected to something called cooping, which is where it's basically like really old school electioneering, because it was getting towards election day, and what they would do is they would take homeless people and they would dress them up as one person, have them go and vote, and then take them out and do it again, take them to another polling place, have them vote again.
Yeah, it reminds me of
to stuff the ballots.
American history from high school. Yeah. I remember.
And so people thought that maybe he was subjected to this because it was right around the time of an election.
That's kind of...
There's of course no way to verify any of that.
Yeah, that's kind of like stretching it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But...
yeah.
I don't
also, I sort of feel like drunk himself to death is a better way to go.
I think, honestly, I think it fits him. I think it's romantic. Mm-hmm. Because drinking for many people is an emotional thing. Yeah. So, we just think he was so miserable and he drank himself to death. It's so beautiful.
But
I don't know. It's not.
It's a disease.
And neither are the conspiracy theories, though, because would we rather believe that he was tortured for 5 days? I don't like that.
I don't want that.
I
don't want him to be tortured. I don't like. It's sad. It's a sad way that he died.
Yeah. And I think I don't know. I think as a society we want our truth to be as interesting as our fiction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is, but not always. And
sometimes.
I don't know. Obviously I've been eye-rolling a lot of my Facebook feed over the past few days.
Yeah, I do that a lot. So with that in mind, maybe we should transfer over to the other writer.
Move on.
That we've been talking about. So thank you, Edgar Allan Poe, for all you gave us. You were a wonderful writer, and
you should have lived longer.
And incredibly influential. One of the most influential writers of the past 100 years, I'd say.
100
or more.
Yeah.
Or more at this point. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd say.
This is what happens when you live in a lifetime that crosses a century line.
Yeah. I'd say there's more than that, because I was just thinking as we were talking about Poe and conspiracy and all that. There are a lot of Shakespeare conspiracy movies too.
I know, and I hate every one of them.
You think like the great artists, we have these conspiracy theories because we can't believe that they were talented. I don't know. It just seems like that we've got a lot of that.
Yeah. Everybody's saying the chat is quiet today. Yes, it is.
What's up?
Everybody's just
we stopped talking about Batman and...
Well, okay, let's move on to our next author here. H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, H.P. He just can't take a good photo to save his life.
No, he really
Neither
can't.
of these men were particularly...
Photogenic.
They weren't models.
Yeah.
They were
I don't know. I'd say Poe was a little photogenic.
Well, he's interesting. He's got that intense face. Lovecraft to me always looked like a really dorky Englishman.
Yeah.
And that was his goal.
Yeah, he really he was very dorky.
He seemed like his jaw was so heavy, like he'd be mush-mouthed or something.
Yeah, and I don't know that too much about like his life. Like I've seen a couple documentaries on his life, but. Mm-hmm. These are documentaries that are made by Lovecraft fanatics, so of course everything's a little biased.
Well, a few things about his life that have stood out to me, because they had things in common with other literary figures. Lovecraft was a huge racist.
Yeah.
And
Well,
when I use that word,
it wasn't more that.
okay,
no, you're,
that's what I mean.
continue.
He wasn't an active hater. He had it really feels like an actual fear of
Yeah.
non-Anglo-Saxon whites.
Yeah.
He really had a huge one, which is ironic because he married a Jew.
He's very.
And that's how I know, because I always find it funny when people marry Jews and they hate minorities. It just cracks me up.
But yeah, he was a very isolated person, like self-isolated, and yeah, he lived most of his life very xenophobic and very fearful, and a lot of that comes through in his writings.
He is definitely the epitome of xenophobia.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell in his writings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't shy away from using, and bear in mind that
you're so nice about it. He doesn't shy away from using. He wasn't shy at all. He was like, these people are monsters.
Well, you have to bear in mind also that he wrote mostly in the 1920s, when a lot of the stuff that we consider shockingly racist was actually pretty commonplace.
David,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know, and that's another thing I find painful about reading classic books and stories, and I think Poe's are easier because we don't have to confront that at all. Mm-hmm. He doesn't write about people who are different. He just writes about white people.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's something I haven't thought about before.
Or if he does write about other people, it's usually in a very derogatory way.
Yeah.
So what we should talk about what makes H.P. Lovecraft so lasting and so fascinating. It has to do primarily with the mythology that he creates and the concepts that he creates. And that goes to the one major mythology that he created that is still fascinating to this day, and it's called the Cthulhu mythos.
Which is a generic term that I think we can use to cover all of Lovecraft's cosmic horror characters.
Just about all of his stories.
Most people just put them all together.
Yeah, it all sort of comes together.
Because Cthulhu's one of many.
And like even stuff like Reanimator falls under it because it takes place at Miskatonic University.
Yes, and there was one thing that Lovecraft did. He did make up some locations for his stories that he used more than once, and that have been used since. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. I thought Arkham Asylum was just a really cool name for a thing in Batman. I didn't know where they got it.
But actually, and here's the Batman.
Here's the Batman.
Here's the Batman connection.
I didn't know where it was going to come, and then it just.
A lot of this stuff takes place either in or around a university called Miskatonic University, which is located in the town of Arkham, Massachusetts. And yes, Arkham Asylum from Batman gets its origins from Arkham in H.P. Lovecraft.
That's why I always knew I loved Batman. It's always been dark, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that's also why Arkham Asylum, just looks so creepy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they did base it... Well, okay. There was an asylum that Arkham was based on that is actually a real asylum that is in Massachusetts, and I can't remember the name of it. But it's like it's your quintessential creepy abandoned asylum that if these walls could talk, oh my god.
Yeah.
And Ava is saying, I read The Call of Cthulhu. I enjoyed the description of the island where Cthulhu lived. Well, he didn't really live so much as was there.
Dwell.
Yeah, because like the big phrase, there is a specific phrase that's used in reference to Cthulhu.
I can't pronounce it.
I'm not even going to try to read it in its original language. Like I would rather read stuff in the Black Speech of Mordor. At least that I can get my tongue around.
But since we've got a story brought up, The Call of Cthulhu, a lot of stuff that Lovecraft, the concept that he came up with, cosmic horror, is something that it took a while to catch on. But
he was not very popular in his day.
It's huge now. Yeah, I would say starting in the 1980s is when newer horror writers, movie makers really just latched onto this idea.
And it is really fascinating. And cosmic horror, I should say, is sort of like a blending of horror and sci-fi. And I'd say towards the end of his career, Lovecraft tended to skew a bit more sci-fi than horror.
And it's definitely, it's fear of the unknown. The
It's
idea
very much, yeah.
that there is something out there that we can't possibly comprehend, which I love because I'm an absurdist. I think that, I think it's really, and I'll say it's absurd
Yes,
that
it
as
is.
human beings we think we are the end all and be all, and that if there is some sort of deity, we look just like that deity.
And instead what we have is Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I don't know how well you can see it in this picture with all the color taken out, but
You can see the eyes and the tentacles, and
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
that's the
Cthulhu.
important bit.
and you can see there's a little guy there in a ship, so you can sort of get a sense of scale.
Now, there is an adaptation of The Call of Cthulhu that was made by Lovecraft Society. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I think it was the Lovecraft Society.
And it's a lovely piece of film. It's not an adaptation to watch if you want to watch a scary movie, because they made made a film of the day. They made a black and white silent movie.
They made a black and white silent movie.
With stop motion animation.
Not really high production values.
No, but it's kind of sweet that they made it.
It was nice that they made it, and when Cthulhu
cute.
finally does appear at the end, he looks kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, but he's supposed to, because you know the budget sucked.
And Temple is saying Cthulhu looks like a giant sea monster.
And he was.
And he was pretty much.
He really is.
The thing with Cthulhu is that he is entombed in a sunken city called Rilla, or Rilla. It's spelled
easier just not to say, is it?
Yeah, it's spelled R''YLEH.
And that's another thing Lovecraft did. He made up a lot of words.
He made up a lot of words.
That are so made up that people, here's, just got one right here. Cthulhu Fhtagn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try to read that stuff. Like I said, I'm better at reading the black speech of Mordor than I am the language of
oh gosh, I just thought of something else. There is another thing. There's another thing besides Arkham and Miskatonic. There is something that Lovecraft came up with, that has become a huge part of horror, especially late 70s, 80s. The Necronomicon.
Yes.
Lovecraft is the person who created the concept of this Book of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think he ever said it was made out of the dead.
No, it was never specifically said that it was made from dead
but
people.
But Sam Raimi, that's fine.
Yeah, in the Evil
cool
Dead.
With that.
in the Evil Dead, the Necronomicon is bound in human flesh and all that.
Which of course it has to be, because
Eravandi says he made up words that sound like you're gagging when you try to pronounce it.
You know what?
It's very true.
He was probably listening to his wife speak to his in-laws in Yiddish and trying to
I can't really say if this was his intention, but these words, they're very hard to say, and so it makes you uncomfortable. And I wonder if that was his intention. This is something that's so otherworldly and so out there
able to say it.
That we're not even able to speak it, let alone comprehend it.
That idea, and it's really these concepts that most of us who love Lovecraft love, because if you've ever read
We just said
Lovecraft,
love 3 times in one
I know,
sentence.
but I didn't mean to, and saying it as part of a name doesn't count, so I said it twice.
Okay.
Anyways, the thing that is difficult about Lovecraft is, unfortunately, he is an amazingly, and when I say the word dunce, I mean he uses a lot of words.
Yeah.
Writer, and he likes to use a lot of what the kids call big words.
Yeah.
Because he has this, and you can tell in his stories, he's an American.
Mm-hmm.
But he had this thing about being English. He had English ancestry. He wanted to be, English. And a lot of his stories have settings and have characters who are from these old families, and it's kind of like he's trying to live his fantasies through a lot of his writing.
Mm-hmm.
As in, yes, my family was like this family, and now we have diminished, and there's only me, just to feel better about himself.
Yeah, he does that a lot. And I was just reading one the other day called, I think it's called The Lurking Horror or The Lurking Fear.
Yeah, I got that one in here.
And that's also about like an old established family that has fallen from grace.
Yep.
Of course, in a much
There's a lot of them.
in a much more horrible way than from the narrator. Than when the narrator is like, well, I was part of a great family. Now it's just me. Now it's like this is about a great family who basically turns into demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. So,
But
so-
he didn't always write about the rich.
no.
The Dunwich Horror is about hillbillies. Okay, so let's be real here. He was afraid of everybody, including certain types of white people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he spent a lot of his time just like cooped up at home, and
you can tell.
and the only reason he could do that was because he was making just enough money writing to live.
Yeah.
Like, he was not a rich man.
No, and I think. God, I feel like I know I'm saying something really big here, but I think that most of us really experience Lovecraft more through the adaptations of him than through any of his original stories.
I sort of feel like that's the case. Well, for one, Lovecraftian adaptations go far beyond just like movies or TV shows.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There are games, there are comic books, there are Cthulhu plush toys.
During his life, Lovecraft encouraged writer friends to utilize his mythologies and actually create more stories based on these god characters.
And there are lots of other stories that expand on the Cthulhu mythos beyond what Lovecraft did.
Yeah.
And it is a fascinating area of exploration, I should say.
All the dudes had issues, and that's why they're able to write such great stuff.
Yeah.
that's my I know that sounds
Yeah.
horrible, but I do honestly have some belief that suffering can lead to some amazing art. But also, yeah, it's suffering too.
It is suffering.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's necessary for great art, but I also feel that some of the greater artists do. Okay, what I should say is like there's a correlation.
There's such a correlation.
There's a correlation, but not a
correlation.
causation.
Oh God, I hope not. Yeah, because otherwise, like everybody in the world would be fantastic at art, right? We're all miserable.
Well, I also know plenty of fantastic artists who are actually quite stable, normal human beings.
No.
Yep.
No way.
Yep, they do exist.
Nuh-uh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Stable artists.
Yep.
I'm not gonna really buy that, man.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So we could talk a little. We should talk a little bit about like what the Cthulhu mythos is and why it's so fascinating.
It is a group of different pantheons. Pantheon being a word meaning group of gods, and that's why we have to say mythos, because he didn't just create one set of creatures. He created. I don't even know if they necessarily share the same reality.
Sometimes it feels like they do, and sometimes it feels like they don't, because you have Cthulhu.
Speaking so abstractly, I know.
because the Cthulhu mythos
abstract.
itself is very abstract.
Yeah.
So we should like maybe run through a couple of the bigger names. Cthulhu, the big one, of course, who is sort of like a god of destruction.
Yeah. Well, basically, he's a big dragony octopus thing, and just the fact that he's a big dragony octopus thing makes you look at him in a godlike way.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we should specify, is that these creatures really are just aliens,
and they
essentially they're gigantic aliens,
and they're alien in the truest sense of the word, is in we just can't, even by looking at them, can drive us insane.
Yeah,
because we can't. The concept of them, the actual
they're so
existence.
beyond our own comprehension. And if you do some Google searches on like the elder gods, as they're called,
you'll find
some really bizarre
imagery. I like
imagery.
The Old Ones from the Mountains of Madness, which isn't the old ones aren't in this specific story I'm talking about. The creatures in the story are not part of the god pantheon, but they're part of a life form that lived on our planet before
they were explorers.
And they were space ready, and they had intelligence.
And they came to our planet millions of years before we existed.
And one thing I really loved about them is that they had radial symmetry.
Yes, they did.
And one of the things that always cracks me up about science fiction is that all of the alien species have lateral symmetry and seem to have one head, two arms, two legs,
Mhm.
a mouth, and you know?
Yeah.
And so
They're
the fact
all
that,
bipeds like us.
yes, and the fact that Lovecraft created these, and if you just Google, Google Yog Sothoth.
Yeah. If you can figure out how to spell that.
YOG space SOTH apostrophe
Yes.
OTH.
Yes.
Don't
and,
watch that's from the Dunwich Horror. Don't watch that adaptation, please.
And the big thing in At the Mountains of Madness is I don't know if it introduced these creatures, but they certainly played a big role in it. Are the creatures of the Shoggoths?
I want to say it did introduce them as well, and then
It may
later
have.
he wrote more about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Shoggoths are.
They're basically slave race.
And they're anything. It's like a putty man.
Yeah, they're like these big blobs that these old ones created. That they can basically become anything, and then eventually they grow conscious. They grow self-aware. They realize just how much the old ones are relying on them, and they stage a coup.
Woohoo!
And all this is told from the perspective of an exploratory team
Of humans
who
who have no idea.
they're in Antarctica, and they stumble upon the ruins of this old city buried under these mountains.
And the horror in it isn't horror because there's a monster attacking you. It's the horror of the unknown.
Yeah,
I mean, even
it's the horror of realizing just how utterly insignificant you are in the universe.
And just the horror of, well, the civilization that they found was, thousands, millions of years old?
Millions, yeah.
But they also found viable specimens of the alien species, and
they
I'm going to stop there because I mean spoilers.
Yeah, we're getting to spoilers there.
Which is reminded me of one of my favorite Lovecraft adaptations that is, okay, I'm not going to talk about that right now. Spoiler.
Okay.
I can't talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you talking about the Sam Neill thing?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Oh.
I am talking. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm talking about the Thing.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah.
The Thing takes a lot. Takes a lot.
Yeah.
It is not at all. If you've seen The Thing by John Carpenter, 1981 or 80 or 82, whatever.
Something like that. Yeah.
It is a very Lovecraftian movie.
Yeah.
And it's not The Mountains of Madness, but...
Yeah, but it definitely derives from it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, John Carpenter is really good at creating a Lovecraftian pastiche.
Yes, that is a great way of putting
film.
it. He does my favorite... He does films that are definitely... He will not call them Lovecraft adaptations, but he's... In the Mouth of Madness is all Lovecraft.
Oh,
Let's just say.
I would say...
We just have to say that.
This was a movie mid-90s, I think. Early
1994.
Yeah. Starring Sam Neill.
The Thing, what thing is scary? Yes, it's a scary thing.
It's a scary thing. It's a very scary thing.
It's a scary thing.
It scared me as an adult.
It's like 35 years old now, and it's still just as scary, I swear.
Mm-hmm.
Swear to God, I saw it in the theaters
It's a movie.
It
really is a movie you have to steel yourself for.
It's amazing.
And
Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
I mean, before the diabetes.
Yeah. But In the Mouth of Madness is another one of these pastiche adaptations that John Carpenter did.
And I felt like it kind of went under the radar because Sam
really
Neill
did.
was in so many other things at that time.
He was. This was like hot off of Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
so
this is that
Sam
time.
Neill was like
this
was like
it should have been big.
This was sort of the transition between Jurassic Park and Independence Day, from Sam Neill being the guy to Jeff Goldblum being the guy.
Wow. That's interesting. So we went from Dr. Grant, so Dr. Malcolm kind of edges in there.
Yeah.
And overshadows him, and then gets a whole new movie franchise, which they're making sequels to.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
But yeah, this is a movie about he works for, he's basically
an insurance
editor.
investigator.
Yeah, he's an insurance investigator, right?
Trust me, I know everything.
And he's hired by a publisher because they're waiting for the next and possibly last installment in a book series by this one author, and the author has gone off the radar. He's disappeared. Meanwhile, people who are reading his books are starting to do crazy things.
And the story isn't told purely in a linear point of view.
No, it's really not.
It's great. You kind of come in towards the end, and then Sam Neill tells us the story, and then you get to see him again after the story, and there's just the last scene in that where he's having this emotional reaction to the world he's living in now is Sam Neill's a great actor.
Yeah. It was a fantastic performance by him and by everybody in that movie. It's a very...
But that's like, it's definitely, if you take a bunch of Lovecraft stories and put them together, you will get the Mouth of Madness. Yeah. Obviously, Mountains of Madness, Mouth of Madness. Yeah. But have to point out, writer of the film named the Lovecraft author, Sutter Kane, after Stephen King.
Yeah.
And speaking of Stephen King, Lovecraft is from the same area.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
New Hampshire, New England, yeah. Which is interesting.
What is it about New England and creepy people?
I'm wondering, because I'm
it's the
starting
Salem
to think
witch
there's
trials.
something...
It just did everything.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
But, we haven't really... we've talked about the fear of the unknown, which is a major theme in Lovecraft. Another major theme is madness. And basically a lot of his stories are sort of framed as a warning to anybody reading it to
don't do what I did.
So don't go down the path I went down because there is nothing waiting for you there but insanity and death. And and that's what it is. It's like it always starts with somebody who's sort of
ruined.
Basically gets just a hint of a clue about something greater in this Cthulhu, elder gods, old ones thing. Like stumbling upon something from the cult of Cthulhu, or stumbling upon a piece of writing from the Necronomicon.
Yeah, finding a mysterious page, finding a strange idol.
Finding a statue,
having strange dreams even.
Or investigating the death of a professor whom he greatly admired, who died mysteriously.
Gotta love the mysterious stuff.
And so it all begins sort of that way, and as he begins the investigation, he starts pulling back the layers. And one of the things that he loves to say in his stories is, "What I found defies description. I can't even begin to put down on the page what it was that my eyes beheld," or something like that.
Which is hilarious.
Which just sounds like a cop-out to me.
Well, because he uses so much figurative language already that you're like, yes, you can totally describe whatever it is. But that's where the horror comes in, because...
Yeah, because
fear of the unknown is, to me, that's the scariest fear.
And it is. It's like, it feels like a cop-out, but at the same time, it just captures your imagination in such a huge way. Because, this guy is so verbose, and yet this he can't put into words.
And exactly, it's the contrast there is pretty big. Another thing that was reminding me of your when you were talking about his protagonists is these guys who write these, warnings, don't do what I did warnings. In the process of their journeys, they are warned themselves.
Yeah.
And they ignore the warnings. Yeah. It's funny.
Which that's not a new thing. Like going back to Dracula, how many times has Jonathan Harker warned, "Don't go to the castle"?
But it's his job.
Yeah.
And he's like Keanu, man. Okay, I gotta get that out of my head.
Yeah.
All right. Back to Lovecraft. Happy adaptations.
So we should talk about the adaptations.
We should, because there's something that Lovecraft stories never had in them. That a couple of adaptations have a lot of.
Which is what?
Sex.
Ah, yes.
I think he was afraid of that, too.
Oh, yeah. Quite.
I mean, women. Are there women? I don't think there's women in his stories.
I'm having a hard time remembering if there are.
Oh, how could that not stand out to me?
I don't know.
Ooh, eyeless albinos. See, this is what you get when you randomly open a book of Lovecraft stories. Eyeless albinos. Yeah, he didn't. Does anybody out there remember if Lovecraft had any female characters with lines?
I really don't remember because
I can't think of one.
I mean, we should talk a little bit about Stuart Gordon's big adaptation, the one he's probably best known for, Reanimator.
You think? Yeah, that's better known than From Beyond. I couldn't put them together though.
They well, I mean, they are fairly together, but I think
Reanimator
is the one that most people remember.
Yeah. Well, how could you forget?
Yeah.
And we're talking about an adaptation of Lovecraft's longer than usual story, Herbert West Reanimator, which was about a guy who, in the story, is like a little blonde German.
Yeah.
And the protagonist of that story is a fellow medical student who is leaving a record of his experiences.
Okay,
with
Ava says there is one woman in the Call of Cthulhu.
Awesome.
Okay.
Does she get called? The wife.
The wife of the
The wife of the Norwegian. There's a wife.
Yep. There we go. Okay.
That's
all
great.
right. Theory disproved.
Oh, bullshit. But you know what? That's kind of blowing my mind because one thing, Stuart Gordon's adaptations of Lovecraft versus Lovecraft is Stuart puts a lot of sex into him,
yes,
and Lovecraft had so little sex I didn't even notice that there weren't that many women.
Yeah.
And there's one woman from one story.
I was focusing more on the unseen horrors that are driving people mad myself.
I didn't hate. I'm usually really like up on that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the kid who stopped watching I Love Lucy because I didn't like how Lucy was being treated by Ricky. It actually upset me.
It's very passive aggressive bullying, but you know that's a discussion for another time.
Oh yeah, but that's really funny. Yeah, he was afraid of everything, including women.
Mm-hmm.
But Stuart Gordon's adaptation, he chose a completely different looking actor to play the role of Herbert West.
Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah, who became Jeffrey Combs.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, he was just some guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
he might not have even had a name.
Yeah.
That was when he got named.
Yeah. Interesting little side note about Jeffrey Combs that is sort of a Tolkien adjacent.
Oh my goodness.
He was one of Peter Jackson's original choices to play Grima Wormtongue in The Two Towers.
Okay, this is me going, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because, do you guys know who...
Because
who did he go with, though?
He went with Brad Dourif.
Who is also well-known in the horror genre.
Yeah.
He's Chucky.
Mm-hmm.
Wormtongue was Chucky.
Yes, he was.
And
but the thing
but
was...
that's great. They wanted Jeffrey Combs.
Well, Peter Jackson wanted Jeffrey Combs because...
he's way
because yeah.
He's already done it.
But also, Jeffrey Combs had worked with Peter Jackson before in
oh my God, The Frighteners.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most underrated
I love that
movies.
That was
ever.
actually the first Peter Jackson movie I ever saw, and
Me
I loved
too.
it.
And that I couldn't believe how great that movie was.
Yeah.
That was so...
I can still watch that movie. I can still rewatch that movie.
Definitely.
At the drop of a hat.
Which is that's really funny. But yeah, Jeffrey Combs is a name in horror, in modern horror, because originally with Reanimator, but then he went on and he did a lot more in it too.
Yeah.
Including more work for Stuart Gordon in From Beyond, which also had Barbara Crampton, who was in Reanimator.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Eravandi says Wormtongue was Chucky.
Yes!
Mind blown.
I know, right?
It's true. It's true. Look it up.
Oh man,
yeah.
I
Brad Dourif played
love
Chucky
in all the movies.
In all of them,
voice.
even like the latest ones.
Yes, and he was originally the human that Chucky was.
Yeah, I know he was the original Charles Lee Ray who dies at the beginning of the first movie, and that's the
he
only time you actually see Brad Dourif on screen in any of those movies.
And he's been doing the voice ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's good work if you can get it.
Yeah, I
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
The first time I saw him was on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, okay.
And then when I figured out who he was, I just
and then realized he was in freaking everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Jeffrey Combs, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And
the first thing I ever saw him in was Brad Dourif. First thing I ever saw him in was Dune, David Lynch's Dune.
Which I just finished reading that novel last night, which isn't horror, so
no, so we can't talk about that. Yeah.
But David Lynch's. David Lynch isn't very Lovecraftian, though, is he?
In the fact that what he creates sort of drives you crazy.
Well, he's more on a small scale. Lovecraft's whole idea of horror is these big unknowns, and yeah, David Lynch has things like, oh, there's an ear.
Yeah.
What's that about? Okay.
I sort of feel like going into the path of madness, the closest Lynch ever really did something like that was probably Lost Highway.
I love Lost Highway.
Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah, that movie.
What's his name? Scared me.
Robert Blake.
Yes.
It
was so scary.
Robert Blake was terrifying in that movie.
I mean, I can totally believe that. Okay, yeah. Anyways,
yeah, we're getting so off track.
Yeah,
here.
it's very difficult with these things.
Yeah. Because this is the kind of influence that these guys have. Is like basically just about anything in pop culture.
Just
like you can
going around.
You can find a way to trace it back to either having a Poe or Lovecraftian influence somewhere.
Yeah, I can't honestly think of something that doesn't.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Stuart Gordon's adaptations, because one of the things that the adaptation that Josh and I saw on Friday was the adaptation of Reanimator,
The musical.
which is now a musical, and it is a musical comedy.
Yeah, it's a
They
very
don't take it seriously.
It's a very campy musical comedy, and it's hilarious.
It is fantastic, and the reason I had to go see it in the first place is because there was some stuff in the movie Reanimator, some stuff in particular that I just was so horrified by, and I wanted to see how they were going to do it on stage.
Yeah,
and it was definitely not anywhere near the book.
I mean, they
so
go low tech, but it was still.
But
it's highly creative.
Yeah, and it's well, the one thing that they don't have that they did have, the movie had more nudity because the movie, and I appreciated this, was realistic. When you've got a bunch of bodies in a morgue, they're not wearing clothes.
Yeah.
If you reanimate them, they're going to be naked.
Yep.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
I don't know why we have to check out Barbara's bush all the time, but that's okay. That's what they want. I don't know. But Reanimator was fun, and it does add sex to Lovecraft, but nothing like Gordon's adaptation of From Beyond.
Yeah.
Nothing can compare. That is the S&M movie.
Yeah. We can't really say too much about it on a show like this.
You really can't. Good. There's it's an enormously entertaining movie, and it is such a stretch of an adaptation.
Yeah.
It really is, but and this is me going back to that thing, should you see the movie, should you read the book first? In this case, I'd say they're different enough to where it wouldn't matter.
I would agree with these. I sort of feel like you can sort of do one or the other, and you'll get a completely unique experience.
Definitely.
And I would say in both cases a satisfying experience.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, because if you see Reanimator the movie and then read Herbert West Reanimator, you're going to be kind of bummed out because you don't see as much action, because Lovecraft didn't write a lot of action.
Yeah, his stuff is very
meditative. He would tell you what happened later. And that's one thing that I think Gordon's adaptations really improved upon, was making them a lot more action-packed, frankly, because that's the problem with Lovecraft stories.
And I sort of feel like that's the problem with Lovecraft in general, is like, I stole the One Ring, is like, wait, what are we talking about? We're talking about H.P. Lovecraft now. I sort of feel like the problem with Lovecraft is that he makes his stories so dense and so wordy, so verbose, so full of like $10 words.
Yes.
That what he's trying to say kind of gets lost in it.
It does.
And you sort of have to read his stuff over and over and over again to sort of realize, oh, this is what he's getting at. This is the concept he's dealing with, and this is what he's talking about. And now, oh my God, it's brilliant.
One of my favorite Lovecraft stories, The Outsider, is only 6 pages, and you can actually print it out, because I taught it. You can print it out to just a couple of pages on, suitably sized font paper. But it's a very short story, but it's so dense that it takes forever to read it because if you don't actually pay attention to the details, the story passes you by.
Yeah.
And it does take some perseverance.
Yeah, and that I was looking for stories that I could do a dramatic reading of for today, and I was looking at Lovecraft, and those stories, even like the really short ones, are just like so weighed down in its wordage that it's almost hard to get through.
They all, no, I would say that about everything he writes,
Yeah.
and I like his work.
And I mean, it's not to say that he's a bad writer. He's actually a very, very good writer.
Is he?
I think so. His imagination.
I like. Okay, his prose is good. He just tends to prattle on quite a bit.
He does. He rambles.
Yeah.
But I think his imagination and his concepts were so ahead of its time that that's why I sort of feel like he was a genius. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's not something when science fiction and horror moved on after the 20s, and there was the atomic age with all the giant bug movies and that, and then we didn't really it feels like until Stephen King we didn't get people who were really derivative of Lovecraft, not
Perhaps,
for quite a few decades.
Yeah, like I mean, Lovecraft did sort of like languish in obscurity for a long time to the point where the copyright on his stories weren't renewed. And so all of Lovecraft's work are in the public domain, and they went into the public domain in the 60s because at the time you had to renew the rights 27 years after the death of the author, which nobody did.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's death plus 75 years, no matter what. So regardless, even if it had been renewed, he would still be public domain at this point. He would have gone public domain in 2012.
That would have been an exciting day.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I do appreciate about Lovecraft is that I can access his work a lot more easily than I can other authors. But oh gosh, what was I thinking of? I'm trying to think of something that made a huge impression on me that came from Lovecraft, that was from a different writer. And
there's lots.
I can only think of one that horribly disappointed me.
Okay.
It.
Yeah. Stephen King's It. Yeah.
It does have some Lovecraftian tendencies in it. It also has some other stuff, which I found immensely disturbing.
Yeah, there's a lot of disturbing stuff that happens in that. But I don't want to talk too much about Stephen King.
Yeah, but
he's going to be the subject of next week's episode, which is modern horror.
And so we should talk about that one.
Oh,
and how you find out, who the big bad is really and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. Because in that case, it didn't work for me.
Yeah, like it's weird because like it is derivative of Lovecraft without being too spoilery about it. But yet, whereas with Lovecraft, it sort of captures the imagination. With Stephen King, it sort of made me just stop and go, wait, what?
Yeah, it turned me off. I was like, you had me going for so long.
I think part of it was because it came so out of left field.
It did, and I didn't know Lovecraft when I read that story, so to me, it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I think if you want to appreciate a lot of modern horror, you need to know H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And we assume, people know Poe, but Lovecraft is important to know too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, don't understand it, and
so
the irony of his name.
And so I hope we haven't dissuaded any of you from reading Lovecraft with all of our talk. I hope we've encouraged a couple of you to actually pick up some stories and read them.
LibriVox.com has
LibriVox.org.
Sorry. Oh, I did it. LibriVox.org I know has some audio
and anywhere on Wikipedia you can find all of his stories because they're all they're all public domain, so you just like there are tons of online collections of his work
I've got
anywhere. Yeah.
And
So it's very easy to find. Some are longer than others. Some are quite short.
Man, we didn't talk about Dagon.
No, or Nyarlathotep.
Dang.
There's so many wonderful things that we could talk about. Yeah.
Lovecraft was amazingly prolific just because he let other writers use his. Well, he was like, here, use my characters.
Yeah. And people did.
And so we've got all of this stuff now that I just, I think that in like 100 years, people are going to read Lovecraft. They're going to start making up conspiracy theories about him.
I have a feeling that in 100 years, people are going to read Lovecraft and think
it was like real.
It was like religion. Because it is. There actually are people who like are serious like Lovecraft devotees, like on a religious scale.
I just really hope that there are people who truly believe in the great old ones, because while they are great for, jazzing up your vampire slaying show or making a really funny movie that makes fun of horror movies, it's important that you know where these things came from.
Yeah.
You should know, that Cthulhu isn't just a giant monster on South Park.
Yeah.
Which is how my students knew who he was.
But you know what? At least he's there. At least they're aware.
At least they're being introduced to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. At least it's there.
Yeah. So I think we'll start to wind this down and bring it to a close. Like I said, there are many things about Lovecraft and Poe that we could talk about, and I mean, there were many other things with Lovecraft that we didn't get to. There were many things with Poe that we didn't get to.
And commenting on Teiko's thing about Lovecraft, if you go onto YouTube, some of the movies we talked about are there. I'm not going to say which ones.
Okay.
But
I will say that Call of Cthulhu adaptation, that one is there, and it's not scary. If anything, I would say it's really cute.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's cute. It's like a birthday card.
It's cute just because you can see that it was done by amateurs who really put their heart and soul into it.
It's sweet.
And so it's
like it's like that homemade Father's Day card or something.
Yeah.
Like, aw.
It's like, oh, they really love their Lovecraft.
But to get the feel of Lovecraft, you need to read it. Really.
Yeah. You should read some of them. Maybe not all of them, but I sort of feel like once you go down the rabbit hole,
you're kind of sucked in.
You do kind of get sucked in.
Yeah. I do recommend actually that people start, if you're interested in Lovecraft, to see if you are. If you're into horror at all, watch the movie The Mouth of Madness.
In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, In the Mouth of Madness. See if you are into that, because if you are, then you're into Lovecraft. If you were frustrated by the movie or didn't like how it ended, then don't do it.
Although, I would say, because I know that there are some people who watch this who are squeamish, it is rather gory.
That's the thing about books. We don't have to see it.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's really the best one.
If you're already into horror.
If you're already into horror and you don't mind the gore.
Yeah.
Then
if you're not into
watch
horror,
that
it
with
is definitely a horror
just to
movie.
see if you enjoy the concept.
I think it's the best concept one.
Yeah.
And if you like Lovecraft, then you got to move on to the other adaptations because they're a lot of fun.
There are some great ones there.
Yeah.
And some good adaptations of Poe. If you can stomach the Black Cat, check out Stuart Gordon's Masters of Horror episode.
And he also has a Lovecraft episode on the same series, Masters of Horror, Dreams of the Witch House.
Oh, I didn't read.
Guess what he added to that one too? Boobies.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, there are definitely none of those in Lovecraft stories.
Stuart Gordon does love to add that stuff to his movies.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll bring this to a close. We do have another dramatic reading. This time I pre-recorded it. So
what are you reading?
I'm reading that bird poem.
Oh, that you said something about that, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's for the birds. Just can't remember.
Ha ha!
Does anybody even say that anymore?
I don't know if anybody says that anymore.
Reading too much classic literature.
So yeah, I pre-recorded this one so that I could edit out bad takes. and also it's not quite as long as Dracula's Guest. When I isolated it last week, it was like over a half an hour long. I'm like, oh god, that's a bit much for one story.
It's a bit much for one sitting with reading.
It is, yeah. So this one is much shorter. It's probably about 10 minutes or so. Jan is saying, sorry, I wasn't that active in the chat. I was just sorting some stuff in my room. I was listening though.
How dare you sort?
Well, good. I hope you appreciated that we were able to actually legitimately work Batman into the discussion this week.
And that made me endeared to Lovecraft. The fact that if Bob Kane, if the Batman universe thinks that Arkham's a good enough name for them,
then it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
But I've loved Batman since I was a kid. So
who hasn't?
Yeah. So we'll bring this down here, and we'll hope you will enjoy The Raven.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books secrets of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, this it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what threat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the graven stern decorum of this countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on this night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Much I marveled at this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at that stillness broken by replies so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But this raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking Nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press nevermore. Then methought the air grew tenser, perfumed from some unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempest sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home of horror haunted, tell me, truly I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within some distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Okay, that was me moving the chair, I think. So that was The Raven. Sorry, I might have startled you when I was putting the mic back on. I hope you enjoyed that. I could probably edit it a little bit tighter, which I might do before uploading it to YouTube. So yeah, that is one of my favorite Poe poems, and I know it's the favorite of a lot of people out there. And you can see Rachel has left. She had to go back home. So I wanted to thank her for coming on the show, and thank you all for participating. I know some of you may not be as much into the horror as some of us are, but I hope that you still find this at least somewhat enlightening. And I know that some of you are really into it, so getting lots of compliments on the reading, so thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And that'll go up on YouTube separately from the full archive. This full archive will still have what you just heard on there, but I'll also put up a separate YouTube video of just the reading like I did last week. And so next week we will be doing modern horror, so we'll be so it's saying I should read some more horror books. With movies, I usually just get scared, but mostly when it's gore. Aravandi says, y'all are always interesting, even when you talk about books I wouldn't normally read. Well, thank you. I'm glad to. I'm glad you feel that way. I know that there are many forms of literature out there that more people are into than others, and there's probably stuff that some of you aren't into, and so I'm glad that even if we're discussing something that you may not personally be into, you're still interested in the discussion itself. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about Stephen King, Anne Rice, Clive Barker, people like that. And we're going to have another dramatic reading, and I've picked one for next week already. So I'm probably going to get to recording that as soon as this is over. Jan is saying, I'm not into cars, but Top Gear is still awesome. You know what? I feel the same way, Jan. I'm not really a car fanatic in any way, but Top Gear is kind of fascinating to me. I don't know what it's the hosts. It's the personalities of the hosts. That's what gets me. So So when you say that you're not into a certain type of genre, but still like hearing me and my guests talk about it, that speaks highly of us, and so I appreciate that. So I will see you all next week. I hope you all have a great week. Thank you all for joining in and participating. I hope you come away from this at least maybe a little bit more intrigued by Poe and Lovecraft than you may have been before. And I will see you all next week. And never stop reading.